Europe is in crisis mode and Ukraine's survival hangs in the balance.
So at any moment, a critical meeting between European leaders and President Trump. They are rallying around the Ukrainian leader, President Zelensky, days before the meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska. The leaders are hoping to leave a lasting impression on the president, shape President Trump's views, remind him of what's at stake ahead of Friday's meeting, and encourage him and remind him of what is at stake with Kyiv's future and fate. Zelensky not expected to be at that summit in Alaska. It is raising worries that Ukraine could be forced into an unfavorable deal. A short time ago, President Zelensky issued a blunt assessment saying this: pressure must be exerted on Russia for the sake of a fair peace. Also saying we must learn from the experience of Ukraine and our partners to prevent deception on the part of Russia. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is live in Kyiv.
As President Donald Trump prepares to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, European leaders are frantically scrambling to ensure their voices are heard in what could be the most consequential summit since the Cold War. Trump has warned there will be very severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to stop the Ukraine war after Friday's summit.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences. Yeah.
But behind closed doors, Trump and aides previously suggested that a deal to end the Ukraine war could be close. Now they're calling Friday's meeting with Putin a listening exercise.
The president is expected to participate in a virtual meeting today with Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky is in Germany, and the meeting will be hosted by the German chancellor. It comes 2 days before Trump's Alaska summit with Vladimir Putin. And he's calling that a listening exercise. That's how Trump's team is talking about his approach ahead of that one-on-one with Russia.
Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
Ukraine's president will not be there, but Zelensky is making it clear he won't cede any land to Russia, and he must have a seat at the negotiating table moving forward.
We will definitely have a trilateral meeting at the level of leaders. I don't know the date. If we want to end the war, it will happen.
To prepare for the summit, President Putin spoke Tuesday with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who's been supplying Putin with troops. Putin and Trump will be meeting Friday at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson on the north edge of Anchorage. Some of the locals don't seem too excited about that.
Having a world leader who with such a high body count is unsettling.
It's an opportunity for us to demonstrate against Trump when he's here.
But here's what makes this moment so dangerous. The talks are taking place despite Russian leader Vladimir Putin's ceasefire refusals and without Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky being invited. Think about that for a moment. The fate of Ukraine, a nation that has been fighting for its very existence for over 3 years, is being decided without Ukraine at the table.
Sources tell NBC News the White House considered including Ukraine's President Zelensky, but he is not invited.
He wasn't a part of it. I would say he could go, but he's gone to a lot of meetings. You know, he's been there for 3.5 years, nothing happened.
Zelensky's fear that Trump and Putin will cut a deal without him.
I'm going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting.
And Trump said he'll talk to Putin about land swaps. The key issue, how much land Russia now controls it can keep, and how much would go back to Ukraine.
This isn't just diplomatic malpractice. It's potentially a death sentence for Ukrainian sovereignty. American officials were pleased and somewhat surprised when the Russian president agreed to a meeting on U.S. soil, on land that once was part of the Russian Empire, no less. As a remote and solidly Republican state, Alaska works well for both Putin and Trump. For Putin, it offers a degree of security and privacy unattainable in a capital city such as Washington, D.C., where his sudden appearance would likely meet with widespread protests. But the symbolism is chilling. Putin, a man wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes, meeting on American soil to potentially carve up Ukraine.
Well, I mean, the president has had numerous opportunities to feel him out. They've had, I believe it's 5 conversations by phone. And so this is obviously, it's a personal meeting, but I think it gives advantage to Putin. And that is because Putin can be a very convincing person. And that is going to be his mission when he goes to Alaska, to convince President Trump that the real obstacle here is not Vladimir Putin. The real obstacle is Volodymyr Zelensky. And that, I think, is what he wants to do. Just blame it on Zelensky. So it's an advantage to Putin. And I would have to question, why do you need a summit at this point if things are so unclear? There are very few details about this that are known at this point.
One big piece of this, Colonel Layton, is the location, right, of this summit in Alaska, a former Russian territory, very close to Russia. Also worth noting, this is the first time that Vladimir Putin will be on NATO-controlled soil since that arrest warrant went out from the International Criminal Court in 2023. How are you thinking about this from a strategic perspective? Because this region of the world is also very strategically important for the United States.
To understand why Europe is in panic mode, we need to look at what's really at stake here. Trump has previously floated the idea of a territorial swap as part of a truce, previewing terms of a potential peace deal to end the war in Ukraine that could include some swapping of territories as part of any deal.
Or even a third-party place. But I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. And, I have a great relationship, I think, with all of them. And I get along with Zelensky, but, I disagree with what he's done. Very, very severely disagree. This is a war that should have never happened, wouldn't have happened. But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders.
The prospect of Ukraine ceding any of its territory to Russia could prove a major stumbling block in negotiating an end to the war. Such concessions are against the Ukrainian constitution, meaning Zelensky would need to first get permission from parliament or a national referendum before agreeing to any shift in territory. But Putin's demands go far beyond just territory. Intelligence suggests Putin is demanding Ukraine hand over the remaining parts of the Donbas region it still holds, a proposal Zelensky has already rejected, stressing that Ukraine's constitution forbids surrendering territory.
We will reject any Russian proposal to pull Ukrainian troops out of the eastern Donbas region. Zelensky warned that withdrawing Ukrainian forces would pave the way for Russia to conduct further offensives. He repeated his position that territorial issues should only be discussed after Moscow has agreed to a ceasefire.
This isn't just about land, it's about whether a sovereign nation can be forced to accept the permanent loss of its territory through military aggression. Enter the coalition of the willing, Europe's desperate attempt to maintain relevance in a process that threatens to sideline them entirely. The initiative, led by the United Kingdom and France, was announced by British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, with President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, and Chancellor Merz co-chairing virtual meetings of what has become a coalition of 31 countries, which have pledged strengthened support for Ukraine against Russian aggression. But this isn't just a talking shop. President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, and Chancellor Merz co-chaired a virtual meeting of Coalition of the Willing Leaders with the participation of President Zelensky and Vice President Vance, ahead of President Trump's meeting with President Putin in Alaska. The timing is no coincidence. This is Europe's last-ditch effort to influence the Alaska summit. Leaders welcome President Trump's efforts to stop the killing in Ukraine, end Russia's war of aggression, and achieve just and lasting peace. They welcomed the open discussions with President Trump earlier that day. But beneath the diplomatic niceties lies a stark message. They were clear that the path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine. The coalition has established clear red lines that directly challenge what Trump and Putin might agree to in Alaska. First, meaningful negotiations can only take place in the context of a ceasefire or a lasting and significant cessation of hostilities. Russia could not have a veto against Ukraine's pathway to EU and NATO. These aren't just suggestions, they're non-negotiable principles that Europe is prepared to defend. But the coalition isn't just about diplomatic posturing. The peacekeeping force is envisaged only to be deployed the moment Ukraine and Russia sign a comprehensive ceasefire agreement or peace deal to settle the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war. The coalition of the willing is ready to play an active role, including through plans by those willing to deploy a reassurance force once hostilities have ceased. This is where things get really interesting. The coalition of the willing will have a new permanent headquarters in Paris, with plans in place for a future coordination cell in Kyiv, as command structures for the future reassurance force are finalized. The multinational force Ukraine will bolster Ukraine's ability to return to peace and stability by supporting the regeneration of Ukraine's own forces. The scale of European commitment is staggering. They reaffirmed agreement to provide at least $40 billion in military support to Ukraine in 2025 to bolster the security and defense forces of Ukraine, matching the commitment made by the NATO alliance in 2024. This isn't just about the current war, it's about building Ukraine's long-term deterrence capabilities. Following the cessation of hostilities, the force is expected to regenerate land forces, providing logistic, armament, and training experts to assist with the regeneration and reconstitution of Ukraine's land forces. Secure Ukraine's skies. The coalition will provide safe skies alongside Ukraine's air force, using coalition aircraft to deliver air policing. Support safer seas. The existing Black Sea Task Force will be bolstered by additional specialist staff to accelerate the clearance of mines from the Black Sea. But here's the crucial question. What if Trump and Putin reach a deal that Europe can't accept? The coalition has already drawn its battle lines. No sanctions against Russia could be lifted as part of a temporary ceasefire agreement. A potential sanctions relief should instead be conditioned on reaching a peace deal. Leaders agreed to step up action against Russia's war economy. They agreed to develop further restrictive measures against Russia's energy and financial sectors, including Russian oil and gas exports, the shadow fleet, and third country supply to Russia's war machine. Putin doesn't just want land, he wants to fundamentally reshape Ukraine.
One of the misunderstandings that the administration has had going into this all along is that Putin just wants land, that he wants the Donbass. But that's just not what this is about. That's not why he invaded Ukraine. He invaded Ukraine to demilitarize Ukraine, to denazify Ukraine, and to really conduct regime change. And so as long as that hasn't happened and Putin thinks he's winning, and he is, then you're not going to see any kind of meaningful peace deal come out of a land deal.
If you think Putin is winning, what do you think is the point of this meeting?
I think that Trump is trying once again, and other presidents have done this too, they just really have this belief in the sheer power of their own personality to bring Putin around, right? He seems very reasonable in person, someone you can deal with. He's pragmatic, or at least he seems that way. But in general, every single president that has tried this has been disappointed in the end.
I want to bring something to the group. During his campaign last year, Donald Trump was talking about his ability to end wars, and he's always had his eye on ending the war in Ukraine. Here's how he talked about it.
This sets up a potential collision course between Trump's deal-making instincts and European principles.
Which President Zelensky or our European allies would think that the best course of action is to begin with a meeting in which Vladimir Putin, an indicted war criminal, is invited to the United States, to Alaska, without having made any indication that he's prepared to make a single concession. Putin's terms have remained remarkably consistent. Recognition of all the, Russian annexed territories of Ukraine, which, again, that's Ukrainian land. No Ukrainian membership in NATO. Essentially no meaningful security guarantees for Ukraine, so Russia can continue to threaten, if not dominate, Ukraine. That's what Putin's wanted from the beginning of this war, and he has not shown any indication that he's changing. I think what the Ukrainians and Europeans are eager to do is to just try to communicate to Trump the concessions that Trump should not make to Putin in that meeting. And, it's vague in terms of what consequences would be imposed on Russia. We should say that economic penalties have not worked at all. They didn't work when I was in the White House in the Obama administration. They didn't work throughout the Trump administration. They didn't work in the Biden administration, even when the most severe sanctions we've ever seen were imposed on Russia. The question is whether the United States will provide enduring military support to Ukraine, whether the United States will provide meaningful security guarantees to Ukraine. That's the kind of pressure that Vladimir Putin might understand. So I feel like we don't have a clear sense of what the objectives are beyond just trying to get some kind of ceasefire, some kind of short-term win here. But the question is, does that effort yield a durable solution to the conflict and a durable solution to Ukraine's survival, including the nearly 20% of its territory that Russia is currently occupying?
It was necessary to continue an approach that combined active diplomacy, support to Ukraine, and pressure on Russia. A diplomatic solution must protect Ukraine's and Europe's vital security interests. The stakes couldn't be higher. Among them is the imperative need to guarantee Ukraine's survival as an independent, sovereign nation and put the brakes on Putin's expansionist agenda, which many fear will continue unchecked should his invasion prevail. Doing so will require a peace deal that holds and lasts, but there's a deeper game being played here. Whatever Trump does, his Alaska summit is already a win for Putin and a loss for Europe. For Putin, the meeting is less about ending the war than about resetting his relationship with Trump. For Trump, it's about a Nobel Peace Prize and keeping a campaign promise. The only one openly talking about peace is Trump, and even he conceded Monday during a White House press conference that it's not up to me to make a deal. Heading into Friday's meeting, Trump says he doesn't expect to walk away with a ceasefire, but hopes to better understand the parameters of a potential deal. He plans to call Zelensky from the plane afterward to see if a follow-up meeting is possible. And there's always the chance he could simply hear Putin out and reject everything. Meanwhile, Ukraine finds itself in an impossible position. In his statement after Trump's announcement, Zelensky said, "Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine are also decisions against peace. These are dead solutions. They will never work. And we all need a real, living peace that people will respect." How many people have died just to give away territory?
To just give away? How many people have died? You understand how many people have died? Just to give away? Give away to whom? Give away for what?
But some think a ceasefire and bolstering their current defences is needed.
They are already lost. These territories are lost. It will take hundreds of years to restore them. Not dozens, but hundreds. The coming generations will have to take care of them.
For those in the Donbass region, the prospect of two men thousands of miles away forcing them from their homes and communities is unthinkable.
We all, people I know, will have to leave. But, frankly speaking, I don't think it's gonna happen.
The European response has been swift and coordinated. Today, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will welcome Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Downing Street for urgent consultations ahead of the Alaska summit. The timing is deliberate. Europe is making one final push to ensure Ukraine's voice is heard. In the same meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he told the group that Putin is bluffing ahead of the planned meeting with Trump. Putin, Zelensky said, is trying to apply pressure on all sectors of the Ukrainian front in an attempt to show that Russia is capable of occupying all of Ukraine. But the fundamental question remains: can Europe maintain its principles if America cuts a deal? Supporting Ukraine is not just the right thing to do, it's essential for delivering security at home. That is why the coalition of the willing is ensuring we have a future force that can deploy following a ceasefire to deter Russian aggression for years to come. But as we continue to prepare for peace, our focus must also be on making it happen. So, alongside our partners, in the coming days and weeks, we will step up our support to keep Ukraine in the fight now, increasing pressure on Putin through crippling sanctions and ensuring Ukraine's armed forces have the equipment they need to defend their sovereign territory. I am clear that the more we do to counter Russia's aggression, the safer we will keep the British people, our allies, and the Euro-Atlantic area. The Alaska summit represents a crossroads moment. Either Trump and Putin reach a deal that respects Ukrainian sovereignty and European security interests, or we're heading for a fundamental fracture in the Western alliance. China said it hopes all those with a stake in the Russia-Ukraine war would play a role in the peace negotiations. Even Beijing recognizes that excluding key stakeholders is a recipe for failure. As the world watches Alaska, the coalition of the willing stands as Europe's insurance policy, a guarantee that even if America wavers, Ukraine won't stand alone. They confirmed they would continue to cooperate closely with President Trump and with the United States of America, and with President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. But make no mistake, this is about far more than Ukraine. It's about whether the post-World War II international order, built on the principle that borders cannot be changed by force, will survive the Trump-Putin summit. Europe has drawn its lines in the sand. Now we'll see if America crosses them. Thanks for watching. And if you want to stay updated on how this historic summit unfolds and its implications for global security, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analysis.